Hey, greetings! Welcome back, everyone, to Sean's Irish Whiskey Shelf. Got a really special video for you this evening. Um, Everyone has someone who in their life may have touched them, inspired them, maybe introduced them to Irish whiskey for the first time. And for me, that person who did all three was my dad. This is my brother. Um, my brother unfortunately passed way too early in life, so he always sits here with me when we do these videos, but he wasn't a big Irish whiskey drinker. On the other hand, my dad was. He enjoyed his Irish whiskey, but the only thing he really enjoyed was Black Bush. He never had a taste for anything else, but he would always have some Black Bush with you. So my dad passed away 3 years ago this week, and to kind of honor him and to thank him for introducing me to Black Bush, I think we'll do a little video this evening on the 3 different Bushmill varieties that are pretty easy to find on the shelf. Now, as I say, these are all fairly easy to find. Especially Bush White. You shouldn't have any trouble finding Bush White anywhere. Bush Black, Bush Red, maybe a little bit, but you know, they're not a limited edition, so you should be able to find these pretty easily. So let's start with Bush White. So if you remember back several videos ago, I put Bush White up against Tullamore Dew, Jameson, and Proper Number 12, and Bushmills white label here was awfully close to Tullamore Dew. If I couldn't find Tullamore Dew and this was on the shelf, boy, I'd drink this just as happily. Bushmills White is a great whiskey. Now, all of these are blends. None of these are a pure single malt, single grain, or single pot still. They are all a blend of single malt and single grain, and that grain being barley. So let's talk about Bushmills real quick here, why they use barley, and give you a little bit of history about the distillery. So first of all, why is it called Bushmills? Well, it's called Bushmills because they get their water from the Bush River in Ireland, and that's the same river where they've got their water to make their whiskey for hundreds of years. That was the original source of water where they made their whiskey. And then, of course, the mills that were there at the Bush River that made the barley became Bush Mills. That's where they got their name. 1608, they like to say that, or they proclaim that they received their license to distill in 1608. They kind of went about their business for a couple hundred years. In the 1850s, the king passed an edict that there was going to be a tax on barley. Everyone was starting to realize how good barley was for making whiskey. So the king decided, all right, time to put a tax on all this barley. And a lot of distilleries gave up on barley and went to corn. Bushmills did not. Bushmills stayed with barley through the whole process. And in fact, they're pretty proud of, because to this day, they still use malted barley. 1885, there was a terrible fire that burned almost every building at the distillery. That was, just a disaster for them. But they picked up and rebuilt. By 1889, they were competing and winning whiskey competitions across the world. So might have slowed them down a little bit, but it didn't knock them out. Same thing with World War II and Prohibition. So Prohibition first came along. Bushmills, their leadership thought, man, that's not going to last forever. So they kept on doing their thing, and sure enough, Prohibition was ended and they were ready to go. World War II, their headquarters were bombed by the Nazis and destroyed. They rebuilt, and today they are the number 2 distiller in the world by volume for Irish whiskey, second only to Jameson. So they've gone through a lot of adversity, and they've overcome, and they've got some really good whiskey. So, all right, so now that you had a little bit of history about Bushmills, let's try some Bush's White, see what we've got here. Good as always. Boy, I tell you what, that is, yeah, like I said, if Tullamore Dew wasn't around, this would be my everyday drink. That is, that's a fantastic drop of whiskey. It is aged, it says on the back here, it's aged for a minimum of 3 years. And that's typical of most Irish whiskeys. And it is a blend, like I said, of single malt, single grain. And it's matured in both bourbon and sherry casks. So it is just a fine, delightful drop of whiskey. If anyone wanted to come along and say, hey, what should I try for my first Irish whiskey? This would be one of them right here. I find nothing wrong with Bushmills. All right, Bushmills Black, my dad's. Little secret, this bottle survived the Great Irish Whiskey Disaster of 2021. The last time my dad had a drop of Irish whiskey with me came out of this bottle. So I don't drink this one very fast. This is a special bottle. So Bush's Black. Now there's no age statement on this bottle, but they do say on their website that it can be aged up to 8 years in Spanish Oloroso sherry casks. They also mention on their website that this is 80% single malt. So we're going to see how this stacks up with the Bush White here. Oh, by the way, to give you the strength of these, this is probably 80 proof. Yep, this is 80 proof. And Bush Black, I believe, is, yep, it's also 80 proof. So right there at the entry level, 80 proof. All right, Bush Black should mostly be the Oloroso sherry casks. Let's see what we got. Very close to the white, but it does have a little bit more of a kind of a sweetness to it, I guess, from the sherry. I do note that it is different than the white. It's got just a little bit more of that sweetness sort of kick. Yeah, I know why my dad liked it, and I'm happy that he introduced me to it. That's a fine drop of whiskey too. All right, Bushmills Red. This is the newcomer on the scene. All right, Bushmills Red wasn't introduced until 2017. So while these have been around for quite some time, Bushmills Red is a new kid on the block. This also has an age statement on the label that said it was aged for a minimum of 3 years. And just like the other two, single malt, single grain. The difference, however, is while this is bourbon and sherry, and this one is sherry, this one is bourbon. So this is finished in American white oak bourbon casks. So we should be able to taste a little bit more of that bourbon flavor to it. And by the way, Bushmills says that if you're a new whiskey drinker, you should really try this first, especially if you're coming from the bourbon world. So we'll see. This is also 80 proof. So let's see what we got here with this Bush's Red. Yeah, so I can definitely get that bourbon kind of hint to it, maybe a little bit of that char taste, like you would expect to find in a bourbon. So if you're coming from the bourbon world and you're already used to that bourbon kind of taste, and you know you expect that, this is probably a pretty good drop of whiskey for you to give it a shot. Definitely more of that bourbony taste than the other two. And again, it's not hateful. I don't prefer bourbon. I prefer my Irish whiskey and I prefer my rye. But really, Bush Red, that's really not bad at all. Or Red Bush, however you want to call it. It really is a good drop of whiskey. Let me see something here. All right, get a little water here. All right, so I can taste a little bit of that, since remember, the white has that mixture, the bourbon and the sherry, and this is just bourbon. I can still taste a little bit of that bourbon in here, not as much as the red. I think the sherry kind of mellows that out a little bit. But honest to goodness, folks, I can't pick a favorite. I really can't. These are all three just excellent drops of whiskey and well worth the money. You're not going to break the bank on any of these three whiskeys. Right? They are economical. They are very pleasant to the palate. This could be an everyday drinker, easily an everyday drinker. So I would strongly recommend, if you don't have any of these on your shelf, that you go get it and add it. Bushmills has some other fine whiskeys. You can see I've got two up there. I've got the single malt 10 and I've got the Prohibition recipe. We'll be adding more. I have other Bushmills that I have my eyes on that we'll be adding. I just think they put out a really good product. So anyway, I want to thank you for joining me this evening. And thank you for listening to me ramble on a little bit more than normal. But I really wanted to pay respects to my dad. I miss having some Black Bush with him. This bottle will go back on the shelf and it'll probably stay there for a while. But y'all can share it with me. If any of you have Black Bush on your shelf, please have a little for me. And for my dad. In the meantime, until we meet again, which should be next week. Hey, next week is St. Patrick's Day. You know I got to do a video on St. Patrick's Day at least, right? Until we meet again, I want you all to enjoy your Irish whiskey, but please do so responsibly. I want you to be safe, be well, and if you liked this video, of course, click the thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Check out my Facebook page. Check out the Irish Whiskey Fans of America, that Facebook page. What a great group of people. And that's about it for tonight. So take care of yourselves. Sláinte. Bye now.